You saw the carnage at the mass murder and shooting in Las Vegas. 58 dead, 489 injured. Las Vegas area hospitals handled that number of casualties without needing any assistance from out-of-state healthcare providers. But what if something this terrible happened in Louisville, Kentucky? Could the University of Louisville Hospital and other local hospitals handle the number of casualties? Well, we're going to find out from Dr. Glen Franklin, who is a trauma surgeon at UofL Hospital. And hopefully he's here to answer those questions. Hi, Glenn.
Thanks, Mark. Glad to be here.
Good to see you again. What'd you think when you saw the Las Vegas shooting?
Well,
in your profession.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, your heart goes out to the victims and to their families. And it's hard to believe something that devastating and that horrible can happen here in America. So your first sense is one of shock and just one of horror and sorrow.
Yeah, I think that's what we all felt. It's the same feeling. It doesn't matter whether you're a doctor, journalist, whatever, you know.
But when you start thinking about it from my profession standpoint, then I actually know some of the surgeons in Las Vegas, so I start thinking about those guys and ladies and how they're going to handle this and how that many people could be transported to a limited number of facilities at any given time.
Right.
So your mind does start racing back to your own profession and what have we done to prepare, and are we prepared, and how would we take care of this type of an incident in Louisville?
Well, how would we take care of this thing in type of incident if it happened in Louisville, God forbid?
Well, we'd like to think that we do a good job. People tend to rise to the occasion in moments of tragedy, and we do have a disaster system here in the city of Louisville that involves police, EMS, firefighters, and the hospitals. There is a triage system of distributing mass casualties. Obviously, the University of Louisville Hospital is the level 1 trauma center. We're going to get the most seriously injured victims. In the Las Vegas incident, a lot of those folks were injured by trampling as they fled the scene. And so many of those folks could have been taken care of at other hospitals other than just the trauma center there at UNLV. And so you look for a system that tries to triage people appropriately to facilities that can handle their level of care. There were so many gunshot wounds that clearly many of them went to hospitals other than the trauma center, and so you have to look at ways of treating those folks as well.
But at UofL Hospital, say something like this happened in Louisville, and all the toughest cases, the worst injured, got sent to University of Louisville Hospital. You know, I guess a lot of folks are saying, well, are there enough beds? You know, we keep hearing that University of Louisville Hospital is a small urban hospital. Yeah. Are there enough beds, surgeons, nurses, everybody else to handle that kind of situation?
Well, you ramp up, and we do have a disaster plan at the hospital. So the first thing that would happen would be you'd cancel all the elective OR cases for the day. And that's inconvenient to some, but in the face of a mass casualty situation like this, everyone would understand that you've got to take care of these people who are dying. We have a call system that would allow us to bring in additional nurses, additional doctors, support staff for the operating room. We do have an internal disaster plan that can be activated that brings folks in. And we have the ability to do some less than ideal, but certainly deal with the masses type of care. For instance, tents in the parking lot, ways to triage people outside of the emergency room. Clearly, the emergency room, there's a bottleneck there, right? There's a door that ambulances drop off patients at. That's a bottleneck by definition. And we would triage people outside in the back parking lot, in the grass area. They can set up tents very quickly. Sometimes in these mass disasters, the issue is not getting people into the hospital. It's keeping people who don't need to be there out of the hospital. And there are plans for that with our security personnel to try and limit the traffic so that everyone who is there is essential to provide care to the people who need to be there for that.
But as I said, you had 58 dead in Las Vegas, so obviously they would not be taken to University Hospital, although they may have died once they got to the hospital. And 489 injured, which you said, a lot of those were trampled, so they didn't have life-threatening injuries, probably not to be taken to UofL. But UofL has, I'm looking at the press release here, UofL Hospital has the ability to treat more than 100 patients simultaneously. 43 patient bays in the emergency department, 20 trauma surgical ICU beds, and 50 critical care beds, plus, I guess, what you can set up out on the lawn, right?
That's correct. We can certainly use the recovery room as an ICU area. We can use any of the beds in the emergency room as a temporary ICU area if necessary. We can expand to out on the lawn as a triage area, certainly not as a treatment area, but a triage area to label the most critically ill to come in first. The infamous Room 9 can be used as a operative area if necessary. Less than ideal, but in these circumstances, sometimes necessary. And we do have a lot of ability to utilize our ICU beds. Now, if the hospital's already full, then we have to start looking for out-of-the-box, solutions, holding patients in the recovery room as an ICU care facility, which would be fine. It's fully functional in that way. But then moving patients from OR to OR as necessary, and some people may stay and actually get recovered in the operating room if necessary, and then we'll just use one of our other operating rooms.
Yeah, it's all hands on deck and anything that works, basically, when one of these things happens.
It is all hands on deck. No one wants to see this happen, but when we have these incidents like the weekend of the tornadoes over in Henryville, people stepped up. People stayed extra shifts. There were a lot of victims that came through that night, and just the storms in Louisville made it a little difficult for people to even get to the hospital. The employees,
right?
And so people stepped up, and that's what I think you would see in really any hospital setting. People go into healthcare because they like helping people, and so they step up.
When you talked about, that they're triaged on the scene, is the training among the paramedics and others in Louisville is to triage them right there on the scene and figure out where they need to go. So I'm assuming that, they look at the injuries, they say, this one's in really bad shape. They need to go to University of Louisville Hospital. This one, not so bad. We can send them to Baptist East or Norton or wherever, right? Is that how that works?
That's how that works. Typically our doors are open for all trauma, and we take all trauma from minor to major trauma. But in a mass casualty situation, the first responders, the EMS, the paramedics, they have a radio contact with the hospitals. They know what people can do and what they can't do, and they have a pretty good idea of where they can send folks around town. And really, all the hospitals will step up to their individual levels of capability. Years ago, during the Standard Gravure shooting, victims were taken to 3 or 4 of the area hospitals. All the shooting victims were not operated on at University Hospital. Some were taken to Norton, some were taken to Jewish, as I remember. What worked about that day was it happened very early in the morning. So all the surgeons were already at the hospitals ready to start their normal operative days. And we have faculty from U of L at all of the downtown hospitals. And so even though you might not be at the trauma center, you might be getting operated on by someone who does a lot of trauma care, because our faculty just happen to be deployed at all of the downtown hospitals. And a lot of these injuries can be taken care of by good surgeons, anywhere.
And you're a trauma surgeon, so you deal with gunshot wounds, I assume, all the time to come in the ER, right?
Nearly every day.
Nearly every day. Tell folks what it's like looking at a gunshot wound and the damage that a gunshot wound can cause. How do you describe that to someone who has never been in an operating room?
Well, on the outside, there's usually a hole that doesn't look very bad. And a lot of times you see on TV shows, you see blood coming out of the hole and people reaching in to pull the bullet out of the hole. That never occurs. That's just not what a real gunshot wound is like at all. In fact, many times we never retrieve the bullet because it's buried in soft tissue or muscle somewhere, and it'd cause more damage to pull it out than to leave it in. On the inside, bullets tumble. they don't always go in straight lines. And so you'll find holes in multiple things. If you think about your intestines being like a plate of spaghetti sitting in front of you, and if you were to take a very sharp knife or a poker of some type and go through that plate of spaghetti once or twice, you're going to cut a lot of spaghetti noodles. And that's really what your intestines would be like with a gunshot wound. And then there's all the solid organs that bleed, like your kidneys, your liver, your spleen, your heart, and those things can be devastating problems. And that's why, getting to the appropriate facility as quickly as possible is very important. Extremity gunshot wounds, wounds on your arms and legs, those can bleed quite a lot. And that's where the Stop the Bleed program comes in to try and get first responders or even bystanders to participate in stopping the hemorrhage, at least temporarily, till a healthcare provider can get there.
Nice segue into Stop the Bleed. I was just going to ask you about that. What is the Stop the Bleed program, and how does it impact, or how could it potentially impact, bystanders and the average citizen?
Well, the Stop the Bleed program really grew out of one of the most publicized mass shooting events in America, the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Hartford, Connecticut. And so the Hartford Consensus began in 2013, shortly after the Sandy Hook event, to look at ways to minimize minimize death, but increase survivability from a active shooter event or other mass casualty event. Several national organizations were involved, including the National Security Council and the White House. The program came together under the auspices of the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma and the military, the Department of Defense. From this report, we learned that many people have survivable, bleeding extremity wounds that bleed to death in the field because no one bothers to just hold pressure on the wound or to put a simple tourniquet on the leg or the arm to stop the bleed. And they came up with this statement that if you see something, do something. And just like the American Heart Association campaign for CPR, which is taught to lay people all over our country. In fact, my kid babysits some, and you teach teenage girls to do CPR to be, quote, a certified babysitter. And so the Stop the Bleed program takes the same concept to try and teach lay people to recognize a bleeding wound on an extremity, to hold deep pressure, and to try and put a tourniquet above that wound. And a tourniquet could be your belt, could be your shoelace, or we have
anything
kits.
You can tie tight.
That's right. We have kits we provide that have a professional tourniquet in it that you can get for $10.
Right. And so if someone wants to take the Stop the Bleed training, what do they do? Just pick up the phone and call somebody at UofL Hospital or UofL Medical School or what?
Yeah, they can call the University Hospital Trauma Institute. And we've been giving classes all over the community. To date, we've trained over 400 people in all aspects of life, from high school kids all the way up to the LMPD SWAT team. It's a 1-hour training program. We have some pretty crafty live models of bleeding mannequins.
Right.
And sometimes we can make it a competition. I did a fire department recently, and we had the two chief officers in the fire department raced on two of our mannequins to see who could stop the bleeding the quickest.
Fastest. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So that's a way that the average citizen, if we do have, again, God forbid, something really terrible, gunshots ring out in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's a mass casualty, something that you can do if you're on the scene right there, and also to show that Louisville is ready for one of these things, as Glenn just said. So there we go. Glenn, thanks for being on the program again. Good to see you.
Thanks again, Mark. I appreciate your interest and appreciate your audience's interest in something we can all do to help.